Everyone in the office thought Kioma was just the quiet receptionist, smiling, harmless, invisible. But what they didn't know was that she knew every single one of their darkest secrets. And while they laughed, lied, and schemed, Kioma was patiently waiting for the perfect moment to destroy the one who ruined her life. Kioma sat behind the marble front desk of Deluxe Properties, her fingers gliding across the keyboard as she responded to yet another email confirming a client meeting. The lobby buzzed softly with the sounds of elevator chimes, office chatter, and the occasional high-heeled clack against the tiled floor. She greeted everyone with her usual warm smile, her tone calm and pleasant, never drawing too much attention to herself. She had mastered the art of being visible but invisible, helpful yet forgettable, just the way she liked it. No one suspected that behind that quiet face was a mind sharper than most in the building. Kioma had been with Deluxe Properties for almost 2 years, and in that time, she had learned more about her colleagues than they would ever know about her. They talked carelessly around her, assuming she was just the front desk girl who minded her business. But Kioma observed everything. Every suspicious glance, every whispered call, every awkward silence that hinted at secrets buried just beneath the surface. She knew that Mr. Kalapo, the manager of business development, often received late-night visitors, women who didn't work at the company. One of them, Kioma discovered, was the wife of a key investor. She saw them once through the lobby glass, tangled in each other like teenagers, unaware that the front desk camera had a direct line of sight. She made a mental note, saved the footage on a private USB, and deleted the trace from the system. She knew that Remy, the accountant, had been adjusting financial records, shifting tiny sums into a dormant vendor account. It was almost unnoticeable, except Kioma once overheard a phone call where Remy was nervously discussing how to clean the last transaction. She didn't say anything. She just started collecting data, screenshots, printed documents, timestamps. She knew when Shade from HR started sleeping with the newly appointed HR director to secure her promotion. She also knew that Fola in marketing was secretly applying to competitor companies, using the company's Wi-Fi to submit applications during lunch breaks. But Kioma wasn't interested in gossip. She didn't share any of this information with anyone, not even her closest friend outside work. Because for her, this wasn't about office drama. It was personal. Every morning as she walked into the building, a familiar bitterness twisted in her stomach. This was the same company that had once swallowed her family's life savings. A decade ago, her father, a retired civil servant, had invested everything in a real estate deal with Deluxe Properties, back when they were still operating under a slightly different name. He bought land from them in Aja, hoping to build houses for rent. But the land turned out to be government property tied up in litigation. Her father was accused of fraud when tenants tried to move in, and the stress eventually led to his stroke. He died 2 years later, a broken man. Kioma's mother had begged the company for justice, even tried to meet the executives, but they dismissed her, claiming they were under new management. Her mother died a few years later, worn down by grief and poverty. Kioma was only 19 then. She never forgot the name Deluxe Properties. When she saw a job posting for a front desk officer, she applied immediately, knowing it was the same company, just rebranded and expanded. It wasn't revenge she wanted, not at first. She only wanted to understand how they got away with what they did. But once she got in and started listening, watching, learning, she began to realize that many of the same people were still in power. The director of operations, Mr. Ayeni, had been part of the land division team back then. He walked past her desk daily, never once recognizing her last name or her eyes that once stared at him during a community meeting, begging for answers. Now, Kioma watched him like a hawk. She didn't need weapons. Her weapon was information. She collected it slowly, methodically, waiting for the right time. To the rest of the staff, she was just the sweet receptionist who brought birthday cake and remembered everyone's coffee orders. But behind her calm face was a growing storm. Someone in this building had destroyed her family's life, and she was getting closer to finding out exactly who. The first sign that things were unraveling came quietly. A short memo circulated to senior staff summoning Remy, the company accountant, to an emergency audit review. Within days, whispers began to fill the office corridors. By the end of the week, the news broke. An anonymous whistleblower had exposed a steady siphoning of company funds into a fake vendor account. The story hit social media before HR could contain it, and although the company tried to downplay the situation, the damage was done. Remy didn't return to work. His desk was cleared out in the night. No farewell email. No explanations. Just silence. And suspicion. Kioma sat at her usual spot behind the front desk, the same warm expression on her face as she greeted visitors and buzzed employees through the security door. She watched the tension settle in the air like a thick fog. People began lowering their voices, shielding their screens. Some even looked over their shoulders as they walked past her, as if they were only just now realizing how much she might see. It didn't stop there. The following week, someone leaked photos of Mr. Kolapo with the investor's wife, photos that could only have come from inside the company's security footage. They spread like wildfire on blogs and gossip sites. The company was forced to address the issue publicly, and Kolapo was asked to take a personal leave. His office was locked, his name scrubbed from meetings, staff group chats buzzed with theories. Someone among them had access. Someone was snitching. People started to point fingers, but not at Kioma. She remained invisible, just as she had trained herself to be. She arrived on time, wore her modest skirts and simple earrings, smiled politely, and kept her tone light and helpful. She blended into the background, sipping her coffee slowly as the company's foundation quietly cracked. Behind her calm expression, she was focused on her real target, Mr. Ayeni. The director of operations walked with the air of a man who believed he owned the company, or at least had something over everyone inside it. He rarely spoke directly to Kioma unless it was to bark orders or demand she reprint something. But Kioma didn't need conversation to learn about him. She had spent the last year quietly collecting pieces, old staff memos, land allocation reports, copies of contracts from years ago when the company still operated under a different name. It was all connected. The fraudulent land deal that ruined her father's life had been signed off by Ayeni. He had buried the evidence in a restructured department. The company claimed ignorance, but Ayeni was right there, authorizing payments, overseeing the transfers, silencing complaints from victims like her father. And now, the documents proving it all sat in Kioma's flat, neatly filed away in a folder marked with a simple label. Justice. She was almost ready. Just a few more things to double-check, a few more names to confirm. She had already contacted a journalist, a sharp investigative writer known for exposing corruption in high places. The man had been skeptical at first until she forwarded 2 scanned documents. Then he called her immediately. They arranged a meeting. He promised anonymity. But just as everything seemed to be falling into place, something changed. Kioma began to feel eyes on her. She noticed it first when her locker at the office had been slightly tampered with, nothing stolen, just a feeling like someone had been in it. Then she started getting strange phone calls. No voice, just silence or static. At first, she ignored them, assuming they were wrong numbers. But when it happened 3 nights in a row, always around 11:30 p.m., she knew it was deliberate. One morning, she stepped into the office to find a printed page on her desk. No envelope, no name, just 4 words typed in bold. You think you're smart. She folded the paper slowly and slid it into her bag, her face unreadable. Someone had discovered that she knew too much. But Kioma didn't panic. If anything, it fueled her resolve. She knew the danger was real now, but she also knew something else. The truth was closer than ever, and she was too far gone to stop. It was no longer about her father alone. It was about the rot inside Deluxe Properties finally being dragged into the light. Chioma was clearing her desk after the morning rush when she got the call. It was from Amaka's personal assistant, requesting her presence in the boardroom immediately. Her heart skipped a beat. The boardroom? It was never a good sign when non-executive staff were summoned there. The walk down the corridor felt like a slow march to her own end. She'd prepared for this moment in her mind 100 times. Being caught, accused, humiliated, fired, maybe even arrested. But she forced her face to stay calm, her steps steady. When she entered, the room was half full. Seated around the long glass table was senior management, including Mr. Ayeni, though he looked far less composed than usual. His tie was loose and he kept glancing at his phone. Amaka sat at the head of the table, her eyes fixed on Chioma, with a look that was unreadable, neither cold nor warm. Just watchful. "Please sit," Amaka said. Chioma lowered herself into the empty chair, her palms on her lap, heart pounding. No one spoke for a long moment. The silence was heavy, thick with tension. Then Amaka broke it. "Mr. Ayeni has just tendered his resignation," she said, her voice even. Chioma's eyes flicked toward him. He didn't meet her gaze. He looked tired, defeated. "We won't be going into details, but certain financial irregularities and unethical land transactions have come to light. Effective immediately, he is no longer with Deluxe Properties," Amaka continued. Chioma felt a wave of shock pass through her chest, not at the news itself, but at the fact that it hadn't come from her. Not directly. She hadn't submitted the documents to the company. She had given them to the journalist, planning to let the public scandal do the damage. But now it seemed someone inside had pulled the plug before the press could. "Chioma," Amaka said, looking her in the eye now, "you're dismissed from this meeting. That's all. Dismissed, not fired, not scolded, just dismissed." Confused but careful not to show it, Chioma stood, thanked them politely, and left the room with the same calm expression she always wore. She walked back to the lobby slowly, trying to process what had just happened. The answer came the next morning. Every major business blog in Nigeria carried the same story. A full exposé on Mr. Ayeni's involvement in fraudulent land dealings dating back over a decade. It named shell companies, fake vendors, bribed officials. It described the collapse of hundreds of families' investments, including the story of one man who was wrongly arrested after trying to build on government-owned land. The story was detailed, specific, and undeniably true. Chioma's evidence, but there was no mention of her name. None. She read the article 3 times before quietly opening her drawer and pulling out the single piece of paper she had once found on her desk. "You think you're smart." Only now, the message meant something else. She knew someone inside had helped release the truth. Someone with access. Someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Later that day, Amaka called her into her office. Not the boardroom this time, just a one-on-one. "You did what needed to be done," Amaka said simply. Chioma didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it either. She just looked at her boss, waiting. Amaka leaned back in her chair. "You think no one noticed you, but some of us did. I've watched you since the day you started. You listen more than you speak. You read people. You understand the room before entering it. That's not weakness. That's strength." Chioma said nothing. She didn't need to. "I didn't leak the documents," Amaka added, "but I made sure they found their way into the right hands. People like Ayeni think they're untouchable. Men like that. They ruin lives. You were brave to do what you did. You're safe here, for as long as you want to stay." Chioma nodded once. "Thank you," she said quietly, then stood and left. As she sat back at her desk, the office around her humming with gossip and speculation, she realized that things would never go back to how they were. People were more careful around her now. They spoke in lower tones, watched her more closely. They didn't know for sure that she had anything to do with what had happened, but they suspected, and they feared her. Still, none of them really knew her. They didn't know that she had once lived in a duplex in Surulere with a father who believed in hard work and honesty. They didn't know how she watched that same man fall apart, accused of crimes he never committed. They didn't know about the nights she sat with her mother, who cried herself to sleep with unpaid hospital bills on her lap. They didn't know that Kioma had come here with a mission. And though Ayeni was gone, it wasn't over. Not yet. Because Kioma had learned something more valuable than revenge. Secrets are currency. Everyone had them. And she knew how to find them. But hers would always stay hidden. Because while knowing people's secrets gives you power, guarding your own, that's survival. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more teachable and inspiring folk tales by FE.